Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, Monday the 24th of November 2025, the giant hail supercell catastrophe. On this hot and humid afternoon, the skies over southeast Queensland transformed with alarming speed, turning what began as an ordinary late spring day into one of the most destructive weather events the region had witnessed in decades. By early afternoon, a dangerous supercell thunderstorm, fueled by unstable atmospheric conditions and a deep reservoir of tropical moisture, exploded over the Greater Brisbane Area. Residents across suburbs stretching from the Gold Coast hinterland to the Sunshine Coast noticed the first warning signs when the blue sky shifted into a dense blanket of churning grays and blacks, accompanied by a haunting silence that always seems to precede severe weather. Forecasters had issued storm alerts earlier in the day, but few could have anticipated that the system would intensify into a catastrophic event capable of producing hailstones measuring between 15 and 20 centimeters in diameter. Ice stones so large they surpassed the size of softballs and rivaled grapefruits or small melons in their destructive potential. As the supercell matured, weather radars detected rapidly rising air currents inside the storm, the kind of vertical lift required to suspend massive hailstones for extended periods until they grew extraordinarily large. By 2:45 p.m. the first reports of giant hail began circulating from suburbs such as Ferny Hills, Alexandra Hills, Logan, and Moreton Bay. Witnesses described hailstones that seemed impossible in size, jagged icy spheres that fell with explosive force and a sound so loud it was compared to gunfire or the pounding of sledgehammers on metal roofs. People who attempted to film the event from their windows quickly retreated as the hail shattered nearby panes within seconds. Cars parked outdoors were instantly pummeled, hoods crumpled like aluminum foil, windshields disintegrated into spiderweb patterns before collapsing inward, and rooftop solar panels cracked under the barrage of falling ice. The first major wave of hail lasted only minutes, but the damage it inflicted was equivalent to hours of relentless destruction. Roofs across the region were punctured, tiles smashed with holes large enough for daylight to shine through once the storm passed. In some homes, the hailstones tore directly through plaster ceilings after breaking the roof surface, sending fragments of insulation and debris tumbling into living rooms, kitchens, and bedrooms. Residents scrambled to move valuables and electronics to safer corners of their homes, but many watched helplessly as water poured in through newly formed openings. One family in Logan reported that the hailstones hit with such force that they believed the entire roof was going to collapse, and moments later a large section of metal sheeting did rip free, sending the family rushing across their backyard to seek shelter in their neighbor's house. Wind gusts exceeding 100 kilometers per hour swept across the storm corridor, carrying branches, roofing fragments, and sheets of corrugated metal through the air. At Brisbane Airport, instruments recorded peak gusts of around 110 kilometers per hour during the worst of the supercell. Trees that had stood for decades were uprooted in seconds, their massive trunks smashing onto fences, cars, and sometimes homes. The combination of violent winds and hail created a terrifying soundscape: roaring gusts, thundering impacts, and the metallic shriek of debris scraping across rooftops. By 3:10 p.m. darkness swallowed the region despite the afternoon hour. Visibility dropped to only a few meters as torrential rainfall followed the initial hail assault. Roads transformed into rivers within minutes, and storm drains overflowed across low-lying areas. Drivers caught on the roads struggled to maintain control as the wind pushed their vehicles sideways and sheets of water poured across intersections. Many motorists pulled over wherever they could, though even stopping was dangerous as hail shredded car exteriors and shattered glass. Emergency services pleaded with residents to stay indoors and off the roads due to the rapidly escalating hazards. Power outages rippled across southern Queensland as trees toppled onto lines and transformers exploded under the stress of ice, wind, and electrical surges. By mid-afternoon, more than 120,000 homes were without electricity, and that number rose toward 150,000 as the storm's destructive core moved northeast toward the Sunshine Coast hinterland. Entire neighborhoods plunged into sudden darkness as their power grids collapsed. For some residents, the outage happened while the storm was still raging, leaving them surrounded by deafening impacts with no light except intermittent flashes of lightning. Emergency crews were quickly overwhelmed. Fire and rescue trucks struggled to navigate blocked roads, and call centers received thousands of reports of structural damage, vehicle impacts, fallen trees, and flooding. Priority was given to situations where people were trapped or in immediate danger, but even these calls created significant delays because of the extent of the destruction. In several suburbs, rescuers had to clear branches and tree trunks by hand just to reach certain neighborhoods. Hailstones measuring between 15 and 20 centimeters, the largest confirmed during the event, came from the storm's most intense core, where updrafts were strong enough to keep ice suspended in a continuous cycle of freezing and layering. Meteorologists later explained that such hail size is exceedingly rare and requires near-perfect atmospheric instability, moisture, and wind shear. Residents who collected the hailstones after the storm passed posted photos online showing massive, translucent chunks of ice, their surfaces jagged and layered like the cross-section of a frozen onion. Some stones were so large that people could barely hold them in one hand. Schools throughout the region went into emergency lockdown procedures. As the storm coincided with afternoon pickup time, hundreds of students were kept inside classrooms and halls while teachers worked to reassure them as hail crashed against roofs. Some campuses sustained damage to windows, skylights, and outdoor structures. Parents stuck in traffic or trapped behind blocked intersections anxiously awaited updates from school staff. But communication was difficult due to the widespread power and network interruptions. In industrial zones and commercial areas, warehouses with older roofing systems suffered severe structural compromise. Several car dealerships reported catastrophic losses as entire fleets of vehicles were damaged beyond repair. Thousands of windshields shattered, bodywork caved in, and alarms echoed across lots long after the hail had stopped. In shopping centers, water leaked through ceilings, forcing staff to cordon off aisles and evacuate customers as tiles bulged under the weight of accumulating water. As the storm finally began to weaken after nearly 2 hours of chaos, emergency teams mobilized to assess the scale of destruction. Streets were littered with fallen branches, broken roof tiles, smashed glass, and ice fragments the size of coconuts. Some storm drains were clogged with debris, causing continued flooding even after the rain eased. Neighbors emerged cautiously from their homes, checking on the elderly, clearing pathways, and documenting damage for insurance claims. Despite the extensive property losses, early reports suggested there were remarkably few serious injuries, a testament to how quickly people sought shelter once the hail began. In rural and semi-rural areas on the outskirts of Brisbane, the storm wrought additional damage to farms and crops. Hail flattened fields of produce, shredded greenhouse coverings, and injured livestock caught outdoors. Farmers estimated that some crops suffered nearly total loss in the span of minutes, jeopardizing months of work and creating new financial burdens. Several barns and sheds had their roofs torn off or perforated, leaving equipment exposed to the elements. The cleanup effort stretched well into the night and continued for several days. Power companies deployed additional crews to restore electricity, though some areas remained without power for more than 24 hours due to extensive line damage. Insurance providers quickly recognized the magnitude of the event, preparing for tens of thousands of claims ranging from smashed windows and dented roofs to total vehicle write-offs and structural failures. The cost of the disaster was expected to reach hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially entering record-setting territory for a hailstorm in Australia. Meteorologists continued to monitor atmospheric patterns following the event, warning that the conditions responsible for the supercell had not fully dissipated. A combination of lingering heat, high humidity, and strong upper-level winds created the possibility of additional storms in the days ahead. Some regions were placed under renewed severe weather alerts as the atmosphere showed signs of re-energizing. Residents, still shaken by the intensity of the hail, shared their experiences online. One homeowner from Brisbane's northern suburbs described the hail as frozen missiles that felt as though they were trying to punch through the entire house. Another resident in Logan recounted that the storm began without rain, just a sudden eruption of giant hailstones smashing down with terrifying speed. Streets and community groups filled with images of destroyed cars, shattered tiles, broken skylights, and hailstones so large that people posed next to them for scale. As authorities reflected on the disaster, discussions centered on how to better prepare for such extreme weather events. Climate scientists noted that the frequency of severe storms, particularly those capable of producing giant hail, had increased in recent years. While it was impossible to attribute a single event to climate change, researchers emphasize that warming atmospheric conditions can enhance storm intensity and increase the likelihood of conditions that produce oversized hail. Across southeast Queensland, the recovery process continued as residents began repairing roofs, replacing damaged windows, clearing fallen trees, and scheduling vehicle inspections. For many families, the storm had caused immediate displacement, forcing them to stay with relatives or in temporary accommodations until their homes could be made safe again. The sound of chainsaws, hammers, and repair crews echoed through neighborhoods for days, a reminder of how quickly nature had unleashed its destructive power. Despite the extensive damage, stories of resilience and community spirit emerged. Neighbors who had never spoken before worked together to clear debris from shared driveways. Volunteers from surrounding regions arrived with chainsaws, tarps, and tools to help secure damaged roofs. Local businesses offered discounts on emergency supplies, and community centers opened their doors to provide meals and charging stations for those still without power. As the sun finally returned to the region,